DNA evidence may have confirmed the identity of the infamous serial killer Jack the Ripper.
Researchers say they may finally know the identity of the infamous Jack the Ripper.
In the early morning hours of September 30th, 1888, police discovered the mutilated body of Catherine Eddowes, her throat slit and left kidney removed, in London's Mitre Square. Eddowes had been the second prostitute inside of an hour found murdered in that section of the city, and the slaying bore the grisly signatures of the serial killer who for weeks had been terrorizing London's East End, Jack the Ripper. As police from Scotland Yard completed their work, Acting Sergeant Amos Simpson reportedly made an odd request to take home a blood-splattered shawl found at the crime scene as a gift for his seamstress wife. His superiors granted permission, but unsurprisingly, the present was not well received. Simpson's horrified wife stashed the 7-foot-long fabric found next to Jack the Ripper's fourth victim in a box. It was never worn or washed as the search for one of the world's most notorious killers grew colder and colder. The person responsible for killing at least 5 Londoners between August and November 1888 was never found, and authorities officially closed the file in 1892.
So, Jack the Ripper is a phenomenon, and he's a phenomenon that is set to continue because we still cannot identify who this man might have been.
The slayings never faded from public consciousness, however. Many people have developed their own theories over the decades, and the lineup of possible suspects has included the father of Winston Churchill, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland author Lewis Carroll, and Prince Albert Victor, grandson of Queen Victoria and second in line to the British throne. Some have even speculated that Jack the Ripper was in actuality a female, and suspects included Mary Piercy, who was executed in 1890 after butchering her lover's wife and child with a carving knife in a similar manner to the notorious serial killer. The shawl reportedly taken by Simpson passed from generation to generation of the policeman's descendants until it was put up for auction in 2007 and purchased by Russell Edwards, an English businessman and self-confessed armchair detective who was fascinated by the coldest of cold cases. Although the silk fabric was frayed and aging, it still contained valuable DNA evidence since it was never washed. Now, after more than 3 years of scientific analysis, Russell says that Jack the Ripper's true identity has been found interwoven in the ragged, 126-year-old piece of fabric, and he names Polish immigrant Aaron Kosminski as the serial killer in his book, naming Jack the Ripper.
This is the only piece of tangible physical evidence that from the times of the murders that has been placed at one of the murder scenes.
Edwards enlisted forensic geneticist Dr. Jari Uulainen of Liverpool's John Moores University in 2011 to study the shawl using a level of analysis that was only possible in the last decade. Uulainen identified the dark splotches on the shawl as stains consistent with arterial blood spatter caused by slashing. He also discovered evidence of split body parts consistent with a kidney removal, as well as the presence of seminal fluid.
The DNA doesn't really lie, so if you have a long stretch of human DNA that doesn't appear from nowhere, so that's how sure we can be.
Uulainen also found the mitochondrial DNA taken from the shawl matched that taken from Karen Miller, a direct descendant of Eddowes, as well as a female descendant of Kosminski's sister, Matilda, who provided swabs of mitochondrial DNA from the inside of her mouth.
When Russell phoned me and he'd seen me on a documentary I'd filmed for the Yesterday channel, knowing that I was a living descendant of Catherine Eddowes.
Police who worked the case at the time of the murders would not have been surprised to see Kosminski's name linked to the crime. At the time of the murders, Kosminski was among the handful of primary suspects. The youngest of 7 children, Kosminski was born in Poland in 1865. After the death of his father, the family fled the pogroms flamed by Poland's Russian rulers and immigrated to London's Whitechapel section in 1881. Likely a paranoid schizophrenic, Kosminski, whose occupation was listed as a hairdresser, was admitted into an asylum in 1891 after attacking his sister with a knife. In the mid-1890s, a witness identified him as the person attacking one of the victims, but refused to testify. Lacking any hard evidence, police never arrested Kosminski for the crimes. He remained institutionalized until his death in 1919 from gangrene. Edwards has long theorized that the shawl was of too fine a quality to have been worn by a London prostitute and belonged to Jack the Ripper, not Eddowes. Using nuclear magnetic resonance, another Liverpool John was university scientist, Dr. Fiaz Ismail, determined that the fabric stage predated the 1888 murders and was likely made near St. Petersburg, Russia. The region of Poland where Kosminski was born was under Russian control, and it would not have been unusual for Russian goods to have been traded there. Edwards told London's independent newspaper that he spent 14 years working on it, and that his team has definitively solved the mystery of who Jack the Ripper was. He went on to state that only non-believers that want to perpetuate the myth will doubt it.
I'm 100% certain. Definitive proof, conclusively proven. Put the case to bed. We've done this.
The report, however, has generated plenty of skeptics, some of whom have noted that the laboratory analysis has yet to be published in a peer-reviewed scientific journal, and that Llewellyn was only able to test mitochondrial DNA, which is passed down from mothers to children, and offers much less of a unique identifier than nuclear DNA, and that many people can share similar mitochondrial DNA signatures. Other critics refute the notion that Simpson was even at the crime scene the night of the Eddowes murder, and note that the shawl may have been contaminated over the decades, since it has been held by many members of the Eddowes family.
I think that, for one thing, there are some problems with the shawl that they used. It is the only piece of evidence, but it was passed down from family members from the police officer who collected it. He gave it to his wife, and then it's been passed down into that police officer's family over generations. And so many people have handled it.
In addition, this is not the first time that DNA evidence has supposedly cracked the case. American crime novelist Patricia Cornwell asserted that DNA samples found on the taunting letters sent by Jack the Ripper to Scotland Yard matched those of post-impressionist painter Walter Sickert.
But the Ripper case, I will just say in summary, I am more convinced of it now than I ever was. I still believe that Jack the Ripper was the painter, was the artist Walter Sickert.
Furthermore, a 2006 study by Australian scientist Ian Findlay extracted DNA from the saliva on the letters and determined that it was likely that the sender was female. So even with the latest news, it's unlikely that the debate on Jack the Ripper's identity will ever definitively be settled.
And I was rather surprised that the DNA sample that we obtained was female.
The only difference is I've got tangible physical evidence to say what I've got to say.
It's also worth noting that Russell Edwards runs a notable Ripper tour and gift shop, which, no doubt, will benefit from all of this publicity, controversial or otherwise.